Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the October Inland SoCal Housing Collective monthly meeting. Um, we have a few people rolling in, so I'll just be doing that as we get started with the meeting. We have an exciting meeting as usual. Today we have Justine Ross with the Center for Community Solutions at UCR, as well as a policy update. It being October, mid-October now, we know kind of what made it across the governor's desk and what was signed. And so we're going to kind of do a housing highlights of those policies that made it through, and a little bit highlights of some propositions to look to pay attention to for next month, as we know the election date is coming up next month. So we'll go ahead and get started. Justine, I gave you presenter rights, and so I don't know if you need them, but you should be able to share screen. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you, Justine Ross. She is the Executive Director of the Center for Community Solutions at UCR. And so they have just launched, I think it was in July. The center was open, and so she has been moving quickly. So she's here to provide us an update on what they're doing. And there's some exciting stuff, so that I'm excited for you guys to hear about. So go ahead. Thanks, Justine, for coming.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you so much for the invitation. And hi, it's so nice to meet all of you. I realize a lot of what I'm about to say, if you came to our launch or if you were at the policy pillar meeting last week or the week before, I'm losing track of time, is going to be review. But it's very, very nice to meet those of you who I haven't met before, and I'm excited to kind of share a little bit about what our center is doing with you, and ways that we might be able to partner or support your work on the ground. So I have some slides, nothing too formal though. I'm going to just kind of skip through, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free at any point. You can, interrupt. I'm happy to take questions during or afterward. Let me just see. There you go. Can you guys see what's on my screen? Perfect. All right. So again, we are the Center for Community Solutions. We are a research center that's housed within the UCR School of Public Policy. And we're really interested in doing work that focuses on finding solutions to the most pressing big picture regional challenges. And so, as Melanie said, we launched on paper July 1st. We had our public launch to the community in mid-September. And in those sort of 2 months, we just undertook a lot of kind of listening to various CBOs, various government agencies, to get a sense of sort of what the substantive priorities of the region were. And for us, it's sort of this idea of being a community engaged research center means that we're co-creating research questions with you all, that we are hopefully doing research in partnership with you, and that we're at the end of the day delivering a product that is actually helpful to the work that you do, and to the important sort of changes or improvements that are to be made in this region. And so we, again, as a center, are very, very committed to this sort of model of community engaged research. And I'll talk a little bit about programming wise what that looks like here in a second. Just to give you a sense, though, since we are still relatively young, we are still going through our strategic planning process. And so I don't have sort of a firm, I can't definitively say these are, the 5 areas that we're going to be studying and all of that today. Hopefully we'll have that by January, but we do have some sort of preliminary ideas with respect to programs and partnerships. And it's been great actually already to have worked with so many of you. So with that, I want to give, and I'm sorry, some of these are a little bit blurry, but for the folks that aren't on the call with me, this is the rest of our team. We have a 4-person staff. I'm the executive director. My background, I have a PhD in political science. I've worked for 4 or 5 research centers within the School of Public Policy over the last 9 years. And so I'm a bit of a generalist, I think, in terms of I've kind of hopped around different research areas, but I'm really, really interested and always have been sort of motivated by how do we translate work that's done on an academic campus into something that's actually actionable for practitioners. Because it's nice to publish things and have people who care, who study the same thing read it, but it means a lot more if people who are actually doing the work can make an impact with it. So that's sort of my background. Our faculty director is Dr. Qingfang Wang. She's also a professor of public policy. She has a really fantastic background in sort of regional development, economic and otherwise. She's focused a lot of her research on underserved or sort of historically marginalized communities. She's a geographer by training, but if you're familiar with her work at all, and I'm happy to share with it at a later point, again, her work is really grounded in sort of development of all kinds, sort of from the bottom up. Dr. Beth Tamiosi is our Director of Community Engaged Research. She has a PhD in urban planning, and she's right now working on overseeing ISC3. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Inland Southern California Climate Collaborative, ISC3. That is sort of an organization focused on climate resilience, a collective of various organizations. And so she's sort of spearheading our administration of that program. And we're very, very lucky to have her as well and her expertise. And then Kristen Kopko is our research manager. And Kristen has a master's in public policy from the University of Chicago. She's very, very interested in housing. So you will see her on various meetings in this space in the future. She unfortunately wasn't able to join today, but Kristen is fantastic. Again, housing, land use, warehousing, logistics. She is sort of our go-to for all of that. And so that is sort of the current team as it's comprised. But to give you an idea, just really quickly, again, we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different stakeholders in our first sort of 2.5 months of operation, wanting to get an idea of what the most pressing challenge was in need of a policy solution, because we obviously have our own ideas, but we wanted to get a better sense from the community. And so this is sort of what we heard. Again, if you came to the launch or you were at the other meeting, you've seen this before. But the size of the bubble corresponds to the number of mentions. So we coded all of the notes from the interviews. We coded some responses that we got to a registration form, and affordable housing was the most frequently mentioned issue. And there was something like 50 some odd mentions, I think, of it. But the really nice thing from us is from a research perspective, and as a center that wants to be able to do all of the things and not have to choose, although we will have to make some choices. The nice thing was that everybody sort of recognized the extent to which these issues are interconnected. And so, obviously, if you focus on affordable housing, you might say, well, affordable housing is the #1 most pressing challenge, but it's not just affordable housing, it's having good jobs so you can afford that affordable housing. It's making sure that there's good enough air quality so that you want to live in this affordable housing in this region, and so on and so forth. And so, again, there were 48 sort of key topics that emerged. And I'm only representing the top 12 here because this is what we focused on at our launch event. But to give you an idea sort of the diversity of what we heard and what we're working with. So with that, we, as I said, are sort of going through the strategic planning process, which is going to help us develop our kind of substantive focus verticals. But in the meantime, we heard a lot of sort of similar feedback from the people that we met with over those first 2.5 months with respect to the need to sort of invest in the region and capacity build, sort of a common theme of we're underinvested. And so these are the programs that we're sort of able to develop and roll out, sort of immediately, even before we sort of conclude our strategic planning process. And so the first is we've worked with the School of Public Policy to sort of plug into a client-based capstone program. And so what this is Masters of Public Policy students at UCR who are in their second year of study complete a 6-month research project from January to June on a policy question. And what we have done is we sort of started sourcing some of these questions, and I'll show you on the next slide what it looks like, but sourcing these questions from the folks that we have met with. And so these are questions where your organization would come up with a question, develop it, and then serve as sort of the client. And so you would occasionally meet with the students. They would be doing the research with faculty oversight and involvement from our center. But at the end of the 6 months in June, you would have, hopefully an answer to your question that can help inform your general understanding of the issue, or provide data and analysis that can help you in your advocacy efforts and other work. So again, to give you an idea, there are other questions outside of this. I'm reusing a slide. I'm actually highlighting 3 questions that are from Lift to Rise here that we're moving forward with on the bottom. But we're looking at, again, these can be big picture questions. They can be narrowly defined, but the ones related to housing, 3 of them that we'd like to highlight so far is, what are the impact of short-term rentals on the housing market? To what extent is the IE an underinvested region? And this is a question we heard not just from affordable housing folks, but from, I think, every single person, it seems like, that I talked to. And then state of evictions in Riverside County, is there variation? I mean, you can see the other sort of smaller text on the screen are other questions that other non-affordable housing orgs have raised to us. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but hopefully gives you an idea of the types of questions that you could throw our way and plug into this program. And so these, again, they just need to be answerable within 6 months. We're happy to meet with you and to talk about whether what you have in mind could become a research question. We're happy to help you workshop it. The one thing is that we do need to get these questions in so we can start working to find student teams that have adequate training, interest in the area. And so if you think there might be a project in the back of your mind, or maybe that your organization wants to complete, but just hasn't had the capacity internally, please reach out. I'll drop my info in the chat at the end of this. But I see, Ryan, your hand is raised, so go for it.
Yeah, I apologize to to interrupt you. Are these, you said these questions need to be answered within 6 months. Are these questions recycled every 6 months, or are there's new questions brought?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the questions have to be answerable within 6 months. So that's part of what we do, is we try to help scope out a project with you and sort of co-create it, so that way it is answerable in 6 months. This program will be run once a year. And so we're looking at having a 6-month project every academic year, again, always January through June. And if your organization was interested, you can submit one question this year and have a different one next year. If you're interested in sort of looking at change over time, or maybe a slight variation of a question, you can resubmit a topic or a question in subsequent years. But yeah, it's meant to whatever is most helpful to sort of your organization. If it's a different topic, great. If it's the same topic in a different lens, or just with more time lapse, that's also fine. So again, if you're interested in talking about what this could look like, please shoot me an email. Again, I'll drop all my info in the chat at the end of this. We are, though, again, just because of timing, it's a little bit of a rush trying to get these in by October 25th this time around. If we don't get to you this year, we can always get to you next year too. The other thing that we heard a lot of from these conversations is that there's just sort of a lack of capacity to do sort of data analysis within organizations, to do research. And there were a couple of organizations that actually framed to me the idea of having sort of like a policy analyst is a bit of a luxury for a CBO, someone's for an agency, that it's not, necessarily the most immediately pressing thing that position that you have to be able to fund. And so we were really, really fortunate, because about a week or so before our launch, we received a very generous gift from Randall Lewis, whom I'm sure many of you know, that has allowed us to create a policy fellows program. And so what this is CBOs and regional agencies will host an MPP student. So this is, again, a graduate student in hopefully a policy analyst type role. And the student's salary is paid for by our center via a gift, a very generous gift from Randall Lewis. And so this is about 400 hours of work. We're looking to kick this off for the 2025-2026 academic year. So that could be as early as June. But we're really looking to get an idea of organizations that might be interested. We're creating a list now, so that way we can go through, if there need to be MOUs or things like that. So if you'd like to learn more about this program, or if you'd like to sort of throw your organization name on a list of orgs that might be interested in hosting this sort of a role, please shoot me an email again. We have a little bit more time. We're looking to really get this sort of a list hopefully finalized by December 31st. And I should add, the good thing about this program is, because it's in its first year, you, to some extent, I think, will get to kind of shape and create the experience. And so if having 400 hours of a policy analyst in a true only policy analyst type of role wouldn't work for your organization, but you have some ideas of ways that you might be able to use an MPP student, again, let me know. We're open to talking about it and sort of co-creating an experience that is really beneficial for the students, but also at the end of the day serves the needs that your organizations have. And then next, we also heard, it's not just having, it's not just that we can't wait for faculty research, which often takes years and is very expensive. And it's sometimes that you can't even wait until the next capstone cycle comes around. Sometimes you just need data today. And it might be because you're applying for a grant that has a deadline in a month. It might be because you're going up to vote on a piece of legislation, in a couple of weeks, and you want to know if there's any research that's been done on a topic. And so we are in the process of figuring out sort of how we're going to hire 2 rapid response policy fellows who will be embedded within our center and who will be made available for sort of these one-off discrete questions that you have. And so this isn't any original, or no original data collection or anything like that. This is really just meant to be, I need to know what work has been done on XYZ topic. I need to know if there's research to back up this idea that we have. I need to know if there is data that I can include in my application, my grant application. So again, this is something that as soon as I have a firm date of when we will be rolling out, I will let you know. But again, this is in direct response to hearing there are these one-offs and capacity is needed to handle. And the last thing that I heard a lot of was sort of the need for data more generally in the IE. And so with that, we are developing a regional indicators report that will start with publicly available data, you can think census and otherwise, to produce a report series that we can generate on an annual basis that will include some analysis, but also just a lot of data on kind of the state of the IE across a variety of metrics. And so you'll be able to use this. Again, it'll be publicly available on our website, and hopefully we'll have some events surrounding it with some discussion. But the idea, again, really is to develop a research product that speaks to a wide range of interests and needs in the IE and makes, again, good solid data available to support the work that you all are doing. The second piece of this is that our goal with this project is to be able to pursue funding that will allow us to sort of further tailor the reports to either specific populations within the IE or specific areas of interest. So for instance, we are really interested in getting sort of a survey that we could run annually up and running that we could pair with the publicly available data. And then in this survey, we could ask questions that are more specific to, the exact interests of our various partners, questions that the IE itself is developing. And we're not just relying on questions that were developed by somebody 50 years ago, which not to say that isn't a great question, but a lot of times with survey data, you'll see, they're questions that were developed at a university in the Midwest, 50 plus years ago, and don't necessarily represent the interest that we have in this region today. So all of that is to say there is a lot more to come, but this is sort of where we are as of today. So I will drop in the chat both our center's URL and also my email address. Please, if you think there's a chance that you would like to submit a capstone, if you just want to learn more, talk different types of projects, your organization's interests, if you want to host a policy fellow, please reach out. And unfortunately, I can't stay for all of today's meeting, but you will have my contact information. So please do reach out. And that's the end of my spiel.
Awesome. Do you guys have any questions?
I have just one. Thanks again, Dr. Ross, for the tremendous resource that you're making the center into. On the regional report piece, how are you guys making the decision about what information to report on in that?
That's a great question. So for this first sort of pass through, we actually have a meeting. We're going to talk about this on Friday. So it's very aptly timed. If you all have ideas of things that you really would want to see included, now would be the time to slip that in. It really is going to have to be sort of in the first pass, being a little bit opportunistic with respect to data that already is available and ideally is sort of updated on an annual basis. Our goal is to identify data that speaks across all of those topics that we identified through our conversations. So ideally we'll have, the ability to provide some insight with respect to affordable housing, with with respect to the quality of jobs, with respect to income, with respect to, you know, a variety of other indicators, many of which I think will fit into the vital conditions framework, which I know some of you on the call are doing work in as well. But yeah, it's a very, very wide net for this first pass through. And we're again sort of at the mercy of what's publicly available, at least to start. Our goal again is to be able to really fine tune and to dig into different areas as we move forward.
I have a question. Hi, Dr. Ross, Griselda here. Will this include Presley Center's research, or will that be separate so I know any kind of reentry or criminal justice stuff?
Yeah, so I think at this time, so for those of you who don't know, there are a couple of research centers within the School of Public Policy, another one being the Presley Center of Crime and Justice Studies. That work is separate from the Center for Community Solutions, not to say that there aren't implications that, you know, right across both centers direction or both centers sort of area of interest, but with respect to, you know, I would say the really true reentry and criminal justice sort of questions, the Presley Center would be more appropriate. And certainly as they've come up in conversations, we've been sort of referring there. And I should say we also, you know, if we're not the answer for you at UCR, we're happy to try to connect you with folks who are.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Ross. A quick question just regarding the fellow opportunity. How many fellows do you anticipate providing this year, and how long do you see this opportunity being available based off of the investment that's been given by Ronald Lewis?
Sure. So I think to your first question about the number of fellows, I think, you know, 7 to 10 probably in the first year. We want to sort of start off a little bit smaller to make sure that we're sort of doing what we can. And the other piece of this is that we do some professional development and some training support on our side. And so we want to make sure that we really are getting the experience right, both for the students and for the host organizations before we expand. With respect to number of years, you know, I think it's a great question. It sort of depends on how many students we ultimately end up placing. I think if we were really, really aggressive with placements, it would be, you know, a couple of years and then we would revisit, you know, funding sort of other donors, other funding sources. But I would say, you know, minimally banking on this, even if we're being very aggressive in sort of our outreach and our administration of the program, I would say bank on it through 2027, 28, probably.
Okay, wonderful. And then a follow-up for that is in regards to the ideal organization for the fellow, do you have like kind of project-based guidelines or what the structure of the organization should be in order to maybe accept
Sure.
caliber?
That's a great question, and something that if it would be helpful for me to develop guidelines, I'm happy to do so. It's truly very flexible at this point. We are cautious. We didn't want to come in and sort of say, you know, they have to be doing this specific type of work and they have to be in the office and they have to, you know, sort of in these conversations with the different organizations that we met with, there was a lot of variation with respect to existing capacity and existing need. And so I think at least for this first round, we're trying to keep it very, very broad. Again, the ask on our side is that it's a hands-on experience for the students and that they're able to do work that is in some way related to policy. And so whether that's, you know, true policy analyst role, if it's some sort of a hybrid, you know, our students are just really at the end of the day looking for opportunities to be able to apply what they've learned. And so I think that would be kind of the initial litmus test, but certainly if me being broad is not helpful, and that was the goal to be helpful, I'm happy to sort of refine and create a document to share. And I saw a question in the chat with respect to sectors and industries. There isn't a specific area that we're looking to target. Again, our students, as many of you know, have a very, very broad range of interests, from environmental to affordable housing to social determinants of health. The list goes on. And so, you know, we're happy and are creating a list, hopefully, that is representative of the broad work being done in our region, which does include both Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Thank you
And
all.
so I wanted to just elevate one thing to the group too. When I was hearing Dr. Ross talk about the different programs they're launching, I was also super excited. I mean, about all of them, but very excited about the rapid response, the 30-day turnaround, because I think, at least, I mean, the collective itself has personally been in this, we've been in this situation where we want to be able to support some type of policy, legislation, or some, just research, and it's those one-off questions. And so to be able to at least get started, right, to not have this thesis statement, but at least to get started on the right trajectory with the support from you all is super helpful. So definitely wanted to elevate that to the group, because I see this being super helpful for all of us in our space as we go to city council meetings to advocate for affordable housing and or look at different policies. I mean, I think this is a really great asset to our region. So once you have those, how we submit that process and stuff, I know it's not something until 2025, but I would be happy to include that and disperse it to all the collective members once you kind of have that official launch of that program.
Yeah, absolutely. We would be happy to. And the caveat that I've been saying throughout all these meetings, again, if you've heard me before, you've heard me say this, use what is helpful to you. And that's sort of is how we're going. It's the barometer for what we're going to continue to invest in. And if you have an idea for a different type of a program, or if you have a different sort of a need, or if you've seen a different institute of higher education or a research entity of some sort be really helpful in a different part of the US or support on a different topic, and we can borrow from them, sort of their model, we're not above that, giving credit where credit is due. But please, this is an ongoing sort of iterative process of refinement, and really we want to be in conversation with all of you. So, you have my email address now. You're always welcome to reach out. I'm always happy to set up a call or a Zoom or come by and meet you in person.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, great. Well, so we have your information in the chat. Thank you for jumping on, Dr. Ross. I appreciate it. I think I've coerced her into coming like 2 or 3 times now to sharing out. So I appreciate your participation in the collective and getting your information out to the general group. So thank you again. We're going to pivot a little bit into talking about the policies and different propositions. Arianna, are you good to go right now? If I prompt you, I know you just jumped in.
Yeah, totally. And sorry if I was unmuted this whole entire time. That is like my biggest
You're super
nightmare.
quiet. You're super quiet.
Oh my God, I hope that was not too. Hi, everyone.
So
yeah,
no, go ahead. So I'm bringing Arianna on from SCANPH, and I know Aisha's here to talk a little bit about yes on Prop 5. I know that I've been sending information out to you all about that, but I mean, Arianna is our local leader on this, leading the charge, and so I thought, who better to come in and just kind of provide a quick update and last minute push, and then we're going to kind of segment our way into a policy overview of what came out in October and what passed through. So if you want to go ahead, I can make you a co-host if you need to, or if you just
okay. You might as well. Hi, everyone. It was good seeing some of you at the SCANPH conference last week. I'm seeing Ian and Melanie, and I got to meet Taylor, and I don't know if anyone else was able to attend. So we have 3 weeks till the election. I mean, it's happening now, right? Ballots have been mailed out. I got mine just the other day. I haven't even opened that letter because it's so overwhelming. I think I don't know how many propositions there are, but there are a few for housing, and one of them that we've talked about, and that SoCal Housing Collective is as a grantee of, and as you all know, is a big part of also this campaign, is the Yes on 5. And Yes on 5, just to reiterate, is lowering the voter threshold to pass local affordable housing and infrastructure bonds across the state of California. Currently takes 2/3 vote needed to pass a bond. It would bring it down to 55% vote needed, which is helpful for most counties actually in this state, but definitely I know those in the Inland Empire. So just where we're at campaign-wise, let me see if I wanted to put this resource in the chat, and I can even share my screen, but who here, I'm curious, was able to attend the coalition call a few weeks ago on September 26th? Melanie, cool. Anyone else? Are any of you getting those emails? Ryan, I see your face, maybe not so much. So this is a good gauge for me, because as we're trying to build up the base in this last few weeks, there are a couple asks that we have of folks in our community. And one of them is to endorse and send in your information. And now I know that Inland SoCal, you guys have, Melanie, you've endorsed on behalf of the coalition. And if groups would like to, have your organization sign on as well. And I'll drop into the chat the Yes on 5 website to do so. When you do sign up to endorse the coalition, you will be asked, you will get these emails when we're meeting together across the state. I'm putting that in the chat right here too. So where we're at, there was a poll done by PPIC a few weeks ago that said if Prop 5 were to be voted on today, would it pass? And it was a 49% yes. And so there's still, obviously, there's margin of error there. And, you know, like, that's great. Like, we're close. Like, that just means you really need to get it over the finish line, because it is a simple majority to have this passed. The purpose of this campaign, and I don't know how much Melanie has shared with everyone, is to be really delicate in how we've been doing our outreach and messaging. Because when the California Business Roundtable measure got pulled, do you all remember that, when it was going to, there was that measure that was going to make it so that anytime the government wanted to create a tax, it'd have to be voted on by the voters, which it effectively changed the ability of government to function. So it was pulled by the Supreme Court because it wouldn't be, it's too much of a constitutional change that it couldn't be a ballot measure. All of that money, there was like 100 million, anywhere from 60 to 100 million dollars that was going into that campaign to support it, had to flow elsewhere. And it was effectively an anti-housing ordinance, because it was in response to Measure ULA out of Los Angeles, where if the California Business Roundtable measure passed, it would have overturned ULA. And as a reminder, Measure ULA is a real estate transfer tax that we have here now in LA that funds affordable housing. So anyway, that got pulled from the ballot, and all that money had to go elsewhere. And so it's going towards anti-housing measures across the state. Because of a bunch of money flowing into against housing measures, the Prop 5 campaign had to make sure that we did our campaigning in a way that didn't activate the opposition so strongly to spend that 60 million to squash our campaign. It did. The money that was going towards California Business Roundtable did go into a PAC to defeat Prop 5, but as of now, we haven't seen the opposition spending, and that's fantastic. And that's because we haven't been doing big press conferences. We haven't been asking your local governments to talk about it at a board meeting or a board of supervisors meeting. We've been kind of keeping it a bit more grassroots this time. And so what I put in the chat is the ways that we're activating organizations like all of those on the call today is through grassroots action, through your organization writing a letter to the editor, or hosting, like, you know, taking photos with Prop 5 materials and posting it on your socials. So I placed that in the chat. And so the two asks that we have from the campaign are: one, endorse. Go on the coalition, the link I put in the chat, join the coalition. That's always helpful. And two, look over that coalition messaging toolkit I sent and any materials, because, you know, anything you want to post and share and tag the Prop 5 campaign in is a part of our campaign strategy that's effective. Now, of course, there is a ground game. Million Voters Project is heading that ground game where they're making phone calls and door knocking and all of that. But the way that us as organizations can participate is really through what I had sent over. So that's basically the update. 3 weeks to go.
Thank you, Arianna. Yeah, 3 weeks to go. So we're, I I mean, we're excited. If you don't know a lot about it or haven't been able to, you know, kind of read through it, it is lowering the voter threshold. It is still, you know, local votes to approve a housing bond, so it wouldn't be at the state level, it brings down to local, and there's great accountability that's also weaved into this. So there's oversight and visibility on how this money is being spent, which is different than what was passed with, I believe, the education, you know, ones prior. So this is to help with infrastructure as well as, you know, affordable housing. So police, hospitals, roads, all that, as well as affordable housing. So super helpful if your local jurisdiction wants to approve a bond. It is now more constitutional, more democratic. You know, a lower, smaller percentage can't squash the efforts of the majority. So super helpful. So thank you, Arianna, for sharing a little bit of update with us. And if you want to drop everything in the chat for anyone who wants to follow up, please do so. I can also answer any questions you want, or if you want me to share out in a little group or, you know, that you guys have, I can come and help share about, you know, Yes Nonprofit 5 with, you know, your group, any meetings, any residents, just let me know. You could reach out to me directly. So then we are going to pivot to talking a little bit about policy. So Taylor, do you want to start off for us?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Taylor. I'm with National Core Amplify, and I chair the policy committee, or the policy pillar, educate and advocate pillar. So if you're interested in policy and want to get involved, definitely encourage you to reach out and get on those meetings. But today we want to provide you just a brief overview of some of the legislation that made it out of this session. As you know, there's a legislative cycle that goes for 2 years in California. This was the second year of 2 years, so it was the final opportunity for a lot of bills to make it to the governor's desk for signature. Looking at it, we'll go into detail on some of the bills, but at a big picture, this year's budget deficit really had an impact in the legislation. You know, a lot of the bills are vetoed because the budget is where it is. You're also seeing the legislature trying to find some non-budget opportunities to have money to raise money for housing. And then as far as the policy to help the development of housing, you didn't see the big sweeping SB 9 or SB 35, these major changes that create new tools. We saw a lot of tweaks to existing tools. So legislature is kind of recognizing that we've done so much since 2017 to make it easier to develop housing. A lot of these bills went to either increase transparency and accountability on the local government side, or just make fixes to existing programs and existing policies. So with that, I'll hand it over to Melanie, who will update on a couple, and then we'll just go back and forth.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So Taylor and I are going to tag team. What I just dropped in the chat is a link to a PDF that was in the newsletter that went out this morning, as well as on our website under our Educate and Advocate for Public Policy. It's just a one-pager overview of what housing legislation kind of made it through that we were tracking. A lot of the stuff that we evaluated as a pillar in the beginning of the year didn't reach the end, right? Most of it was, I think all of it, I have to look back, I think all of it was shot down. It didn't make it, but these were other housing pieces that made it forward. So you could follow along on the one pager, or just listen to Taylor and I provide an update. You guys could take some notes too if you'd like. But I'll start us off with, we're not going to go in order on the one page. We're just going to kind of bebop around, but I'll start off with AB 2347, which basically is, let's see here. Oh, so this one focuses, so prior, it's basically a modification. So prior, tenants were given 5 days before eviction, before they were evicted after an eviction notice. Now, with this new legislation, tenants will be given 10 business days to respond to an eviction notice, which is doubling the deadline of business days. And then if the tenant doesn't respond within that time frame, they'll automatically lose their eviction case in that manner. But it basically extends the timeline, doubles it, which was great. It definitely is needed. Let's see here. I'll do SB 450, which also is another kind of modification from SB 9. Remember, SB 9 was one of the, was it last year's or the year prior, where developer where you could split a lot to build, for a duplex or split lot. So what had happened with the SB 9, there were some loopholes, and so Senator Atkins tightened it up. And so in the application, if a local agency denies it, or they have to respond within 60 days of the local of the application, and so basically this legislation provides a process and timeline in which the city has to respond and interact. They can't let it lay dormant or not acknowledge it, but it requires a process and timeline with as a build off of SB 9. Let's see.
All right, and then SB 440 is one of those ways that the legislature is trying to find more local solutions to raise revenue for housing. It would allow 2 or more local governments to form a housing finance trust, and it would allow them to raise and allocate new revenue on their own. So it would just another local funding mechanism to raise money for financing. SB 937 is one of the bills we followed from the beginning. That is aimed to reduce the cost of developing affordable housing by delaying the payment of impact fees. So when a development is going through the entitlement, the approval process, they have to pay impact fees to account for the impacts to local infrastructure and other community amenities. And this would just delay when those are paid, which is actually has a significant impact on interest that's paid and helps the project get going.
And so we'll look at SB 1395. This is to address the shelter crisis, and it's basically accelerating the production of tiny homes. Formally, with traditional homeless shelters, they are exempt from a lot of the red tape. But with this bill, it would expand shelters to include non-congregate and relocatable homes, such as like tiny homes more specifically. So this bill would extend city's ability to streamline the construction of these homeless shelters to include tiny homes also. And then, so for SB 1187, housing programs, the Tribal Housing Reconstitution Resiliency Act. This is basically, it's not creating a new source of funding, but what it is doing, it's allocating 10% of the already existing funding from the Annual Budget Act for the purpose of, so what it's allowing is a designated 10% to be held for any tribal housing grant programs. It's held in a trust for them to access and to build specifically on tribal land.
All right, SB 2011 is an ADU law. This, which stands for accessory dwelling unit. A lot of the ADU legislation has targeted single family communities. This one does allow up to 8 accessory dwelling units to be built on land with existing multifamily housing. So trying to add accessory dwelling units, more units to existing multifamily properties. And then AB 98 is not a housing bill, but I know we're all community advocates. So wanted to highlight AB 98, which has specific standards for the Inland Empire, and it establishes warehouse standards. So it's responding to the proliferation of warehouse and logistics uses, especially in the inland region. And so it adds a lot of standards. It's a very complex and complicated bill. So it'll take some time to kind of dig into and see the impacts to the region, but wanted you as advocates to know that the warehouse industry is facing quite a bit of standards that are no longer left to local agencies. Do you have any more, Mel?
I have one more. That's what I was just looking at my list and comparing it. So the last one is AB 1053. So the housing programs for multifamily housing programs, the expenditure loan process. So this would authorize the borrower to use funds approved that are, reserved or allocated by the department following the effective date. So the specific guidelines for the purpose of providing a loan under the multifamily housing program. So they'd be able to access those funds earlier rather than later. And I think that's it. Our other only notable ones that did not pass, do we want to talk about?
I could touch on those.
Okay.
So there were two that actually did pass the legislature and did make it to the governor's desk that were tied together. So if one of them was approved and one of them wasn't, both of them were canceled out, and that's what happened. So AB 13160, we spent a lot of time on these two, would have committed California to the 500 million enhanced state tax credits for the next 5 years. So it would have made kind of what's been the standard for the last several years, a permanent part of the budget going until 2030. This was approved by the legislature and vetoed by the governor due to the budget situation, which meant that this next bill, AB 3190, which would have added prevailing wage and labor requirements to that program, the state tax credit program, it means that both of them failed. So even though governor signed AB 13190 in favor of the adding more labor requirements to tax credits, which has not been the standard, they both ended up failing because he vetoed 3160. And there were some others. This isn't an exhaustive list. We saw some bills that tried to fix the builder's remedy, which is a very complex accountability tool, some other preservation bills, but this we felt was a good mix for the region.
Ryan, I see your comment. If you want to jump in and provide some context to 1037, there was a lot. So we kind of just backed ourselves into a list that we could, that we thought were relevant. So if you want to enlighten us a little bit, that'd be helpful. SB 1037.
1037 confounds me. Essentially, it's planning and zoning as it regards to enforcement elements within the housing element. And so it would give HCD and the Attorney General the power to impose civil penalties of between $10,000 and $50,000 a month on jurisdictions that are in violation of their housing element requirements. It says that in the law. That's as much as I can speak on it. I'm intrigued if anyone has any insights as to whether or not that is smoke and mirrors, or if it's actually going to be of use in any form. So yeah.
I don't have a definitive answer. My guess, based on other similar legislation, is that it will be used on a select few jurisdictions, kind of to make an example. But I don't see them having the capacity or the desire to go through all 500 and some jurisdictions. So really, I'm sure they'll make an example out of somebody, but I doubt it will be exhaustive of all jurisdictions.
Good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was also looking at the Digital Democracy Cal Matters, and their analysis. It's an unfinished business, so it sounds like there's a lot of more questions on actual delivery of this and what it would even look like too. So I think that the jury is out for most folks still on what.
Thanks for bringing that up. We love hearing about what other people are watching.
Yep. I just added that. So.
On that note, also then, just to throw one other your way, because I think this is particularly relevant, but it's SB 1123, which has to do with subdivisions and granting ministerial review. But it basically says that in certain subdivisions, ADUs don't count as residential units, and so it allows for development on vacant lots zoned for single family with specific density requirements to issue those density requirements or exceed them.
Was that a bill supported by MPHS or one that you are trying to implement?
Just one that we've been looking at because it's kind of impacting some of where we're able to now move into certain spaces. We're big with ADUs, and so
Yeah.
this has been very nice news on our side of things. And it basically just goes in and kind of reworks parts of the Starter Home Revitalization Act. So something to keep on the radar for anyone who's in the business of ADUs.
Thanks for bringing that up. If nothing else, I find that these bills help with the backstop. It's like local governments now are kind of forced to come to the table and work with you. So glad that you have that. And thanks for elevating that one. Any other bills or questions about what we provided, what we discussed? Mel and I, we haven't really talked about this, but for the next, I think we have a November meeting, really looking at the next year, both on implementation of existing bills and our priorities for 2025. And again, encourage any of you with policy interests and experience to reach out and get involved in that policy group.
Yeah, this next month we tend to lean in November and December, talking about where it makes sense for the collective to follow in terms of implementing to the region and making sure our voice is at the table. So if there's anything you want to elevate where you think we should be involved in the implementation process and serve ourselves in that, please let me know and please attend those meetings. You can email me or just tell me that you would like to be added in the chat, and I'll go ahead and add you to those. Awesome. Well, thank you, Taylor and Ryan. Thank you for highlighting or elevating those additional bills. So we're going to transition. We're right on time. Transition to some partner updates. So this is just a general update time where, if there's something going on, something you guys want to elevate, concern, or even an event, an activity, something you're all doing. We provide this space and time to do so, as well as we allow time for our pillars to provide an update. So Taylor is the chair of our Educate and Advocate for Public Policy, and kind of just naturally led into that update of what we're headed next and what we're going to be focusing the next two months. But I also wanted to provide space for other chairs of our pillars to do so, or just provide general partner updates. So if you guys want to jump in, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I have something. Taylor, I'm glad that you're excited about your email address there with the explanation point. That's not my announcement. My announcement is for everybody to save the date on November 14th from 1 to 3 p.m. Melanie and I are actually going to be doing a presentation on findings from our field study in Vienna with the Global Policy Leadership Academy. If you don't know this already, the state of Vienna in Austria has one of the most advanced social housing programs in the world. They continue to rate amongst the city with the highest quality of life, most livable city in the world. Homelessness is virtually non-existent. Everybody lives in housing that's affordable, and it takes a lot of planning, and the way that they're going about it has a lot of implications for things that we could do here, but we need groups of people to help us figure out what that looks like. And it starts with sharing at least our findings and opening up a conversation so you can all be aware. So November 14th at the Civil Rights Institute of Inland Southern California in downtown Riverside from 1 to 3 p.m. And you'll be receiving a newsletter with that information as well.
Yeah, so the newsletter went out this morning. So if you haven't yet seen it, go ahead and check in your focused folder or your spam or junk. Hopefully you didn't go there. And we have the link there. I'm also bringing up the link. I didn't have it ready, but I'll drop it in here while we're doing updates if you'd like to register for that. We did do one iteration in San Bernardino, so this is a follow-up, kind of reaching out to our Riverside folks too, but anyone from the region can attend. So anyone else? I don't know if any of our chairs want to jump in, Chris or Ayako, or if there's any other member updates.
Melanie, is that going to be duplicative of the San Bernardino event or on? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'll be duplicative. So, and then after that, we'll be doing kind of a more planning follow-up. Yeah. All right, so no more updates. Okay, well, I'll just, oh, go ahead, Ayako. I see you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ayako Utsumi here. I chair the expansion of housing solutions pillar of the Inland SoCal Housing Collective. We meet monthly, the second Thursday of every month at 9 a.m. So if anyone is interested in expanding homeless housing, home ownership in the IE, please do join us. So again, second Thursdays of the month, 9 a.m. Please email Melanie, or me, and we'll get you on the list. But in October, we took a hiatus from meeting because last week was the Southern California Association's Nonprofit Housing's annual meeting. I see a number of people on the call that were there. It was really a great time. And it would be great to continue to have more IE participation in SCANPH, so we can, again, make sure that our IE voice is heard in the big city. Okay. So one thing I wanted to add is the SB4 work. That's the using faith-based land and education land for affordable housing. So a few weeks ago, Fuller Seminary in Pasadena held a very, very well put together conference on, faith-based organizations using their land for affordable housing. Really, I felt like really top-notch, excellent quality content. And I'm waiting to get the slides, and there are a number of speakers there who I thought were very interesting. And I'd like to pass that along to the IE. I know Riverside's going to do an event soon. Is that right, Mel? Okay, so I'm hoping to have that information soon, so we can perhaps try to incorporate some of that. But again, just wanted to share that there is a lot of movement in faith-based housing. And I think those are the highlights for right now. Mm-hmm. Melanie, do you have anything to add?
Ayako, who put on that event at Fuller?
They're an organization called Faith Collaborative. Okay, let me look it up. They're called Faith Collaborative.
I think we're in contact with them. I think I know who it is. Philip Burns and Jill Shook and Jono.
Yeah, Jill Shook.
Yeah, yeah. So we're in contact with Jill Shook and her team. So okay, this is like a beautiful segue into our November 7th Faith-Based Housing Forum. So this is an event that is for our faith-based partners and leaders in this space. So the forum is really geared towards helping faith leaders understand affordable housing. We aren't yet really bringing that affordable developer in yet to kind of partner to do it. So it's everyone who's interested, who has land, and they're like, hey, maybe we could do this. And we're bringing in actually someone from the team, from Jill Shook's team, to talk about it. Taylor will be on. They've done this. National Core has also done this with a couple other faith partners. And so it's a spotlight for, it's an opportunity for faith leaders to learn about and to have that kind of safe learning space together. And then we're looking to kind of merge those two different groups together to be assets to each other, right? If they're interested in kind of building that. So this is November 7th. If you are interested in attending, please let me know. I'm actually just finalizing we had some, because the date was shift, we had to reorganize some of our speakers and their availability. But we are releasing or opening the event, Brian. I'm going to release it tomorrow. And so if you'd like to register for it, let me know, and I'll send it directly to you. Or if you know of any faith entities that would be interested in learning about it, send them my way too. We're sending out a mass email to those folks by Friday, maybe not tomorrow, but by Friday. Awesome. Thank you, Pastor Green. I'll make sure to include you. You are on our list to email, so you will be getting it.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And one very interesting thing about the Los Angeles faith-based collaborative to end homelessness, it's actually housed under LAHSA, which is the housing authority, the COC, the Los Angeles COC, and they actually have specific staff who are assigned to to the different planning areas. They call them spas in LA. They actually have staffers who are assigned to work with faith-based organizations by region. So I think that's a very interesting organization that LAHSA has set up, and they put money behind it. And I'm not aware that any of our COCs has something similar, but it is, I think, an excellent model for us to explore. We don't have to do it, but just explore what would that do for us. Something to think about.
Definitely. So I think this is something that we'll be continuing the next couple meetings in the expansion housing solution pillar 2 of how do we better plan and bring in TA and resources and set ourselves up to be successful, right? So, yeah. I think we are okay with pillar updates. Trying to just see who's on. Okay, great. So if there's any other general member updates right now, please feel free to unmute yourself and share it out. I know many of you guys have galas, award ceremonies, conferences. It's definitely that time of year, so everyone is pretty busy. But if you want to give a shout out or anything, please feel free to unmute yourself and do so. All right. Okay, well, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. We'll jump off a little early. And I look forward to seeing you all within the working groups, the pillar meetings, or next month on our all collective meeting. So, all righty. Take care. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Ready?